saw me pick all those greens in the garden the other day, and I've had those in the fridge for a couple of days. So what I did was I just picked them, I cut the big stems and everything out of them, and then I gave them a good wash, like a double wash. I washed them once and then I washed them one more time to get as much of the, I don't know, dust and little pieces of leaves and all kinds of stuff off of them. So they're nice and clean, and then I popped them in my fridge outside for a couple of days until I was ready for them. And today we're gonna make a gigantic batch of greens. We're just gonna mix the two different types of greens together. Honestly, it's actually 3 different types of greens, I think. Mustard greens, turnip greens, and collard greens. We're just gonna put them all in together in my giant roaster over here and cook them up with some smoked turkey wings and some other flavorings, of course. But that'll make a huge batch of greens, and then we'll divide it up into what we're gonna actually have for today, and then we'll freeze the rest of it. That way I can take out some greens anytime I want it. Alan and I really like to eat greens, but it's a lot of work to make them. You know, you kind of have to think about it, and it's not really easy to keep that much greens fresh. That way you can cook them up when you want them. So this will be a good way to go. And I'm not really doing much today. This is actually New Year's Day. I also ran to my local little grocery store because they had a good sale on these spiral hams. So I'm gonna cook this up too, and we'll have that for the next few days. So we'll have that for dinner tonight. It's kind of like 11 o'clock right now, so it won't be done until a little bit later on after lunch. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that going. It's gotta get into the oven so that it can actually get done in the next couple of hours, and then we'll have it today as well. Okay, let me just show you what I'm doing here. I have my spiral ham. I have a foil pan I need to get out. This is the little glaze pack. We'll deal with that later. I need to get out a sheet pan or something to put this foil on. Okay, so I just get a sheet tray. Definitely want to put the foil pan onto something, otherwise it will be too flimsy. So this is just gonna go straight into the pan with the big cut side down. This said to cook it for 15 minutes per pound, and this is about 8 pounds. So it'll be about 2 hours of cook time. So it needs to get going. This has like a little cover thing on the bone so that it doesn't poke through. And it's just gonna go straight into the pan here. And then you just cover it with foil. All right, so that takes care of the ham. We don't have to worry about it for a while, and it will be in a 325 oven for 2 hours. And then we will start to put this glaze packet or whatever on there. I would prefer it without the glaze packet. It always tastes good either way, but we'll deal with that glaze packet later on. Let me just clean up a little bit here, and I'm gonna run outside to the outside fridge and get all of those greens out as well. Tidy up the kitchen a little bit. I got my roaster pan out just a minute ago, but I'll run out and get all of the greens, and we'll start to deal with them. All right, now we got the greens inside. This is a mix of collards, mustard greens. There's only a little bit of mustard greens, like maybe half a pound of mustard greens. Collard greens, mustard greens, and turnip greens. And then I'm also gonna put in a couple of chopped up turnip roots, the actual turnip themselves, with these greens today. So that'll be a first for me. I usually don't put in the actual turnips themselves, but it's always good whenever I have them and they're that way. I always like that. So I'm like, why not? I have a ton of big turnips, so I might as well put some into the greens. So with these greens, I'm gonna set them aside for a few minutes. We don't really have to mess with them quite yet, because at first I wanna chop up a bunch of garlic, the turnips themselves, and some onions. All right, get these big old things out of the way. Set them back here for a little while. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. Okay, bringing the beans or the greens back up here. I'm just going to run through all of this with my knife. I already took out the biggest pieces of stems, like the big vein that runs in the middle. Well, not out of this one, obviously, this mustard green. For the most part, I did. But I'm just gonna chop these roughly down into some smaller pieces. That way it's a little bit easier to eat. when it comes down to it. So just sort of into ribbons basically is what I'm doing. So see how now they're just kind of in pieces like this rather than whole leaves, or basically whole leaves. Okay, so instead of waiting, I think I'm just going to chop and drop all of this straight over into the roaster. I don't have any liquid in there quite yet, but I have 1 thing of pasture-raised chicken bone broth here. No, this is beef broth. So I'm going to put it in. I thought that was chicken, but it doesn't really matter because the rest of the broth that I'm going to make, it will be chicken broth. I think all total I have about 6 pounds of mixed greens here. So like I said, it's just all going to go into the roaster here. I'm just trying to cut as much as I can at once without like involving my fingers. Okay, so we got all this chopped up. 1 small piece left. We got all that chopped up and it is full. So I'm gonna mix up some more chicken broth with some chicken bouillon and pour that in as well. And then just throw the lid on for quite a while. After about an hour of cooking, I'll come back and start to taste and season things and see exactly where we're at. But first of all this greens has to wilt down, and so that will take a little bit for everything to get nice and warm through and start to wilt. Okay, it's actually been 2 hours since I put this in, but I just wanted to show you what it's looking like. I added chicken stock, salt, pepper, and that's it. Oh, apple cider vinegar, a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Okay friends, it is the end of the day here, and I wanted to show you how this meal is going to come together for our New Year's Day dinner. So my greens are done, totally done. All I did with them is I put them on, what time did I start them? Maybe right around noon. And so I cooked them this entire time they've been cooking. So I turned them up on a pretty high temperature at one point, let them boil for quite a while, and everything got really soft in there, including the pieces of cut up turnips. And these are probably the best greens that I've ever made. I don't know if it's the mix of all the different greens together instead of just turnip greens or what, but these turned out so well. Also, I think that chicken bouillon that I used, that's really one of my favorite flavors of like a bouillon or whatever. So that also really helps because it took a lot of the bitterness out. And I think the greens were just better than the first greens that I made this year in general. They're not as bitter because the weather's been a lot cooler, so they were not as bitter in the end. So anyway, I put in some black-eyed peas. All I could find was cans of black-eyed peas, so I literally just got 1 can. All I could find was cans at my store yesterday, so I just grabbed 1 can of those. I thought for sure that I had some dry beans, but I mean, I have a lot of dry beans, but no black-eyed peas at all. So I just took one of the pieces of the turkey wing out of the greens as they were cooking, and I put it over in the black-eyed peas saucepan while those are heating up, just to impart a little bit of flavor into those as well. So I also put some seasonings, just like some Cajun seasoning and stuff in there with the black-eyed peas. And then I'm not even gonna have to make cornbread with this, and I'm not gonna have to make rice because I have both of those already left over. And then the ham finished cooking earlier, so I just have had it setting to the side, and I will reheat some of it for our dinner, and we will have that right along with everything else. So this is gonna come together very, very easily, very soon. Okay, so here's the greens. They are done. All I did, I took out those turkey wings and I picked off the meat. So I put the meat back in there with them, but took the bones and everything out. So don't they look wonderful? Now we'll eat some of these tonight. And as I said, the rest I'm gonna put into pint-sized freezer containers, and I'll refrigerate them first overnight so that they get nice and cold. And then I'll throw those into the freezer tomorrow after they are chilled. Well, the rest of this dinner is gonna come together fairly easily because cooking the greens and cooking the ham was basically the hard task for the day, if you could even call it hard. They're very hands-off tasks. So I did end up getting about 8 pints of greens that I could put into the freezer. So like I said, I just refrigerated those overnight, and then I froze them the next day once they were nice and cool. You see here I'm adding a little bit of liquid to each container after I put the greens in. And then I refrigerated them for a while. And the rest of the dinner was just basically reheating some rice. I put some cornbread into the air fryer that I had made the previous night and got it nice and crisped up again so that we would have it with this dinner. And I'm just dishing up now my black-eyed peas, which I simmered with a little bit of seasonings. Those are just canned black-eyed peas. And then in go my greens into my little dish here, and I'm going to add some pepper sauce to those as well to eat them, and that is something we always have on hand for our greens. And then a little ham and that delicious cornbread. I'll put my recipe for my cornbread in the description box below as well. We like sweet cornbread here in the South, so if you don't like sweet cornbread, this one's not going to be for you, but if you do, this is the best sweet cornbread. And here's how everything came together. A delicious dinner plate. I'm adding a little bit of hot pepper sauce, and we're going to enjoy this meal. It was so delicious, and hopefully we have set ourselves up for a year of health, wealth, and prosperity by eating this, right? We did all that we can do to get our 2024 off to the best start possible. So there's my toasty cornbread, and I really appreciate you being here.